Today, well, welcome again, everyone. I'm Jake Meola, also known as Jake the Insurance Guy. Today, we're going to do a little bit on auto insurance 101, right? So, can I get just a show of hands? Who in here has auto insurance? This should be everybody raising their hands, right? Okay. Who enjoyed shopping for their auto insurance? Yeah, that's what Paul, really? Okay, I've got a bunch of liars in here today. So there's a lot of things that go into your auto insurance. A lot of people will think they know a lot about it. They might not necessarily know a lot about it. I hear this phrase thrown around a lot that I have full coverage. Has anyone ever heard somebody say that? I have full coverage. What does that mean? Does anybody know what that means? Does that mean that you're covered? Does it mean that you have
It means
collision?
you're full of it.
Right. So there's a lot of people that think that they know what they're talking about, don't necessarily know what they're talking about. So we're going to talk about a little bit of the back end of what goes into your auto insurance, right? So a lot of things that I hear from people are, why is my rate this? I called this carrier and it gave me this rate. I called this carrier, it gave me this rate. Why are they different across the board? Or what goes into the actual rating of your auto insurance, right? So there are some pretty standard ones that we all know about. Age, of course. If you're trying to get insurance for somebody who just got their license, has anyone recently had to do that? You'll notice it's a nightmare. The insurance rate will skyrocket because they know this is a young driver. They're new to the road. They don't know the rules necessarily yet, so they're going to charge you an arm and a leg just to get your coverage, right? Then we have, of course, your driving record. That's your motor vehicle report. So all the tickets you've ever gotten, if you've ever been convicted or not, that doesn't really matter. The fact that you got a ticket, it still shows up. So a lot of people, they know that if you go to court and you plead down, you get remove the points on your license, that ticket still shows up on your insurance, right? So you're not necessarily getting rid of that off of your record. You're just changing what it comes up as, right? And a fun fact, your driving record, they actually do a 5-year pull for your motor vehicle report. So you got to think back for the last 5 years, any tickets that you've had on your history, right? A lot of people think it's 3, but it's actually 5. Your prior claims, right? So if you've had any claims on your auto insurance in the past, there are a lot of weird things about claims. So the different types of claims react differently. So if it was just a windshield claim or a towing and labor, you might be penalized a little bit less than if it was something like a full-on collision. Your comprehensive coverage claims under that, they actually don't weigh as much because those are considered things that aren't necessarily your fault. So if a tree branch falls in the car, you hit a deer, theft, fire, anything like that, those don't necessarily affect your rate as much because they're not necessarily your fault. But again, claims, that's another 5-year window that they're looking at. Your gender, surprise, surprise, right? So your gender has an effect on your rate. Usually men are worse drivers as far as they are more reckless. Although any man I talk to, they will say that women are worse drivers. I'm not getting into that. I think that there are plenty of bad drivers on both sides. So take that for what you will. One that people don't realize, your zip code has an effect on your auto insurance rate. Raise your hand if you knew that before. Well, obviously, Robert, yes, great. So some of you knew it, might be because of your industry. Your zip code is a factor due to the environment that you're in, right? So if you're in, say, Tom's River, your insurance rate based on your zip code is going to be a lot different than somebody who's in, say, Newark or Elizabeth. That's because they're also factoring in things like theft, fire, people, hit and runs, things like that. So what environment you're in affects your rate. So if it's a more populated area, they know that there's more people around to do damage to your vehicle, and therefore it's more likely that you'll get in an accident. So that's an important one to remember. I also like to remind people who are moving, getting a new house, or just changing locations, that they should also look into their auto insurance at the same time, because that zip code will affect their rate moving forward as well. Your marital status. Most people don't know this either, but you can actually get discounts by being married on your policy. Sometimes people will choose to have separate policies when they're married because they don't like the record of their spouse, or this, that, and the other thing. They like to keep their money separate. But sometimes you actually get a discount, having the both people on the policy and, your marital status being as married. And your education. So you can actually get a discount for having a higher education. So if you have a master's degree, a doctorate degree, you can actually get a discount on your insurance. The assumption being that if you have a higher education, you'll be smarter on the road. Whether or not that's accurate or not, That's for anyone else to decide, but that's what their thinking is. So the smarter you are, the better you drive in theory. And of course, your credit score. So your credit score is a factor in everything in life, in at least the United States. So if you have a stellar credit score, but not necessarily a stellar driving record, you can still sometimes get a pretty good deal because they have a good idea that you're going to pay them, no matter what the rate is. So they're happy about that. However, if you have a great driving record and not necessarily a great credit score, you might see some increases in your premium because they're pretty heavily weighted on the credit score side of things. And your occupation. So sometimes, I don't know if it's a white collar versus blue collar type of a deal, but various carriers, not all of them, but various carriers will ask what your occupation is, and sometimes it will change the rate based on what you select there. So being an independent agent, it's great to be able to see the back ends of various different carriers to see who uses what and what actually affects the rate in different areas. Every carrier is different, so that's why it's important to check in various locations, because something that might be penalizing you in one location might actually be a benefit for you in another, right? So what are your options, right? So when people think about their auto coverage, they typically think of, okay, I have my liability coverage. So if I hurt somebody or if I, damage something, I'm covered there. They have their coverage for their own car, right? So their collision, their comprehensive. So this is damage to your own vehicle. But after that, people don't really think too much into what their options are, mostly because when they're calling to get their insurance, they're really just calling and asking for, hey, this is the coverage I need. Can you get me the cheapest price, right? They're not really thinking about what their options are. But there's some pretty cool stuff that you can do out there, and knowing what your options are is really helpful to give you the best thing that you want and having a policy that actually does what you want it to, rather than just making sure you're street legal, right? So usage-based programs. Has anyone heard of these before? You got Snapshot from Progressive, you've got, the Right Track from Liberty Mutual. Basically what these are programs that you can enroll in that help by tracking what your driving habits are and can give you a discount based on that usage, right? So each program is different, and I advocate for some over others, only because some programs can actually penalize you based on your driving, and I'm not a fan of anyone's rate going up after using a program. I like people to get discounts, right? So knowing what your qualifications are on that and what your driving habits are, so that you know whether or not it's a good idea for you, that's definitely something on many different carriers. Roadside assistance. So usually if you have AAA, you don't need to have this, or if it comes with your existing car policy, if you have a lease or something like that. Excuse me. But essentially roadside assistance helps you if you've got a flat tire, if your car breaks down, all of that good stuff. If you need a tow, important to have. If you don't realize you don't have it, it can kind of leave you in a little bit of a pickle. So definitely check on your policy. Rental reimbursement. A lot of people opt not to have this because they don't realize it's an option, but this would, if your car was in the shop for a claim, it can't just be broken down for no reason. If it was due to a claim, they'll actually reimburse you for renting a vehicle on a daily basis, right? So you can have anything from $25 a day all the way up to $100 a day, as far as what you think it would cost for the type of rental you would want to use. And you can go any variation in between, but that's nice to have if you don't have a second vehicle in the household. That way you're not stranded or stuck doing Lyfts or Ubers every day until your car is fixed. There's also the option for new car replacement. So this is typically for cars that are 1 or 2 years old, fresh off the manufacturer. They'll actually give you the option to have new car replacement. So if you do total the vehicle within those first 2 years, they'll actually replace the full value to buy the new car rather than the depreciated amount, which, as you know, can be quite significant. Once you drive off the lot, the value goes, it kind of plummets as soon as you're off the lot. So having that option available is really nice if you have a new car and you're worried about, what happens if it gets totaled. On the same token, better car replacement, that's if you don't necessarily have a new car, not the first 2 years, but maybe within the last 10, what they'll do is they'll actually, if you total the car, they will replace the car or fund the car for 2 model years newer or 10,000 miles fewer on the vehicle. So you actually get a better car than what you had started with by having that endorsement on there. OEM parts, essentially, if you have a nice high-end vehicle, something like a BMW, a Tesla, anything that has its own parts, you can opt to have OEM parts only. So that way, when you have a claim and they have to replace something, they're guaranteed that they will only use the original manufacturer's parts for that. very important because certain cars won't work well with their, fabricated, replacement parts that are aftermarket. So having this on there, if you have a car like a BMW, it's really important that they'll be replaced with BMW parts as you need it. And decreasing deductible, this is essentially if you are a good driver, if you don't have accidents on your record, you can opt for the decreasing deductible, which actually lowers your collision deductible by $100 every time you renew the policy, right? So if you chose to have a $500 deductible and you choose the decreasing deductible, when you bind the policy, it'll actually be a deductible of $400. And each year when you renew that you don't have an accident, they'll actually give you another $100 towards that deductible. So 5 years down the line, if you don't have any accidents, you're now at a $0 deductible. And if you, God forbid, did get in an accident, you wouldn't have to worry about any out-of-pocket costs when dealing with the claim. Accident forgiveness. So for all of you good drivers out there, if you haven't had an accident in a while, usually it's 5 years or more, you're eligible for accident forgiveness. Essentially, that means that, if you were to get in an accident, the first one would actually be forgiven by the insurance company because they know that you've had an amazing history and you did opt to pay a little extra for the accident forgiveness. This can be very important because if you've had such a clean record and God forbid something happens where you have a big accident, now you're stuck with that history of an accident on your policy, and that can really affect your rates moving forward. So if you have accident forgiveness, that one gets kind of wiped from your slate and you are basically back to your clean record, but you do have another 5-year window before you're eligible for accident forgiveness again. And finally, the way that you pay your payments, right? So a lot of people will opt to do a monthly option for their auto policy, depending on whether or not you have a 6-month policy or a 12-month. You can also choose things like a 6-month term at a time or an annual term at a time. You'll actually get discounts for the way that you pay. So if you pay in larger chunks at a time, you'll actually get a discount on the premium itself. Sometimes it can be pretty substantial. A couple $100 over the year can really add up. So if you have the money lying around, or if you have a credit card that you want to earn miles or points on, I recommend paying everything in full. You'll save money on the premium, you'll earn those points, and then you'll basically be done for the year. You won't have to worry about that coming out every month, right? So myself, as I mentioned, I am an independent agent. So what are the benefits of having an independent agent versus going and shopping around for yourself? Customization without compromising on the price. Essentially, I can find out what you want to have in a policy, customize it on each quote that I come up with, and find the carrier that has the best option for what you want in your policy. Expert advice from experience with many carriers. So since I have worked with so many different carriers, over 13 in my insurance career, I kind of have an idea of what factors into each of those carriers, what to avoid, and what things you can take advantage of. So my advice is crucial. The ability to shop around without the hassle. Many of you have shopped around before. You end up having to call various different carriers, say the same things over and over again, go through the same spiel. A lot of times you end up with a quote that's different than what you had started out with because they didn't run the reports. They didn't give you an accurate number. All of a sudden they run the reports. You had an accident or a ticket in the past, and now your rate is twice as much. So you're able to basically get a bird's eye view of all of your options together, a side-by-side comparison, and you're able to choose based on the things that are important to you, what makes the most sense without doing any extra work. I do all the work for you. You get a representative and not a 1-800 number. So I don't know if anyone has ever had to call back when they're, if they went with Geico or anything like that. You can never get the same person that you started with when you're starting a quote or you're working with somebody on a claim. Having somebody to be able to reach out and talk to is important so that you're able to get back with the same person, not have to repeat yourself, and have somebody who understands the situation from beginning to end. And sometimes even get advice on whether or not to even put in a claim. Sometimes if you call the call center, you're like, hey, this happened, I'm not sure if it's worth putting in a claim. They might still put in a claim on your record without you even saying, oh, we want to put this in. So even if it's a $0 claim, they just acknowledge that something happened. You might get penalized in the future just because you called in and asked. So having someone available to answer that for you without that hassle is pretty important. No brand loyalty. So I'm not wedded to any one particular company. I know the benefits and the downfalls of all of them, and I'm able to be pretty objective in the way that I describe things and let you know what's best for you, not just best for myself as an agent. You have the ability to switch your carriers and still keep your agent. So as years go by, if you find that, you know, your rate has gone up or you had an accident and now you need to shop it around again, you're able to still shop it around and still continue to be with me as your agent. So you can have the benefits of knowing who your carrier, your representative is, but also not be stuck with the same carrier for your lifetime just because you like the person that you were working with. This is all the information about the carriers that I have available. As you can see, there are a lot of pretty popular, pretty name brand carriers here. And this is just for the auto side of things. For the home and renters and all that good stuff, there are more options, but these are the carriers that we have just for the auto space.
Jake, you did a great job. Thank you. I hate to do this, but we do need to wrap it up. We've had, so we're over the hour, but you see Jake's information there. There's certainly a lot more detailed information to insurance that meets the eye. So yes, absolutely. Great job. Appreciate that. We're going to wind it down today for Relaxed Teams Central New Jersey. Again, we get together every Wednesday morning, 8 a.m. You can find us on the website and feel free to join in. We have a lot of other slots open, basically a small business networking group supporting each other in today's day and age, really through Zoom, and also getting to know each other and help each other with referrals. So great job again, Jake. Great job, everybody, on the 30-second commercials, and we'll do it again next week. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.